Over the last, two off seasons, we made some difficult decisions in order to set up the franchise for sustained success. But we're really excited about the young core that we have in place on, both sides of the ball, and are looking forward to see them grow and develop over the next, several weeks. I also want to just mention, Todd and his staff, they did a fantastic job running a great off-season program, and we're all looking forward to seeing their vision come to life on the grass here as we begin training.
He just said it out loud. No hedging, no spin. The starting quarterback needs a name before week 1, and not one day later. That single line from Andrew Berry is enough to send a fan base into a spiral. Because underneath that calm, measured tone is a truth nobody in Cleveland wants to say too loudly. This quarterback room is still wide open. Camp is starting, and the clock just started ticking. This is the story of a franchise trying to hold two things at once: patience with a young core, and pressure to finally get it right at the one position that's haunted this team for years. Let's set the scene. Berry steps to the podium at the start of training camp, and before anyone asks him a single question, he wants to talk about people most fans have never heard of. 2 longtime members of the grounds crew retiring after a combined 5 decades with the organization. He calls them the embodiment of servant leadership. No glamour, no spotlight, just excellence and humility, day after day, year after year. It's a small moment, but it tells you something about how Berry wants this franchise to see itself: loyalty, patience, character over flash. And then almost on cue, the questions turn to the exact opposite: pressure, doubt, and a quarterback competition that refuses to resolve itself quietly. The first big storyline isn't even about quarterbacks. It's about 2 veterans who just got paid. Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit, both former first-round picks, both homegrown, both just locked up on new long-term deals. Berry doesn't downplay it. He calls them core members of the team, the kind of players who become load-bearing pillars for everything else you're trying to build. He even jokes that if 29 and 27 count as old around here, he's in trouble himself. But there's a deeper current running underneath the joke. Berry goes further than just praise. He calls players like Ward and Delpit something close to structural, the kind of presence that acts like a load-bearing wall inside a locker room. Not because they're loud, not because they demand attention, but because everything else gets built around them. And when a reporter presses on how much a team with this many new, unproven faces actually leans on guys like that, Berry doesn't hesitate. He says it's not about collecting veterans for the sake of having gray hair in the room. It's specifically about having elite players who are also elite people, the kind who quietly hold a locker room together while a coaching staff and a young core figure out who they are. There's also a number that matters here, one Berry brings up almost like a badge of honor. Since this front office took over back in 2020, only a small handful of players have ever made it to a 3rd contract with this organization. It's a short list, and Ward and Delpit just joined it. Berry calls it an incredible accomplishment, not something handed out, something earned, and something that requires being exactly the right kind of player and exactly the right kind of person at the same time.
Quarterback competitions with this organization, there always seemed to be like a caveat that came with them. A piece of the roster might have been incomplete or whatever it was. When you look at this current quarterback competition and you look at the young skill guys that you have brought in here, do you kind of feel like this might be one of the more fair, balanced, equitable quarterback competitions that you guys have been able to have in a training camp for a long time?
I don't know that I could. It's a good.
Because just months earlier, this same front office made a decision that shook the fan base to its core, trading away one of its most talented, most explosive defensive players, Myles Garrett. Gone. And when that trade happened, a lot of people wondered if it was the start of a full teardown, a total youth movement, burn it down and start over. So when reporters push Berry on it, does locking up Ward and Delpit long-term signal a change of direction, a course correction after the Garrett trade? His answer is blunt. He says the Garrett situation wasn't some grand plan. It was an opportunity that showed up unexpectedly, and taking it didn't rewrite the franchise's entire philosophy. Ward and Delpit, in his words, are simply in the prime of their careers, high-level players and high-level people, exactly the kind of investment this front office wants to keep making, regardless of what happened with Garrett. Translation, this isn't a rebuild, it's a specific kind of build. Keep the pillars, get younger everywhere else. There's also a timing story hiding inside all of this. Getting 2 second contract caliber veterans locked up before camp even opens isn't an accident. Barry is asked directly about it, about dodging the kind of messy holdout drama that's plagued other franchises around the league. And his answer is almost matter of fact. This front office doesn't do holdouts, period. He'd rather get business handled early so those players can walk into camp thinking about football, not about contract leverage. No awkward questions hanging over practice, no tension simmering in the back of a locker room. Just two guys who know exactly where they stand, free to focus on the job in front of them. It's a small operational detail, but it says something bigger about how this front office thinks. Certainty, wherever they can create it, which makes the one place where they can't offer certainty, the quarterback room, stand out even more. And that's where the tension really starts to build. Because the biggest hole in that plan, the one position where getting younger actually means something enormous, is quarterback. Reporters keep circling it. Different angles, same question, over and over. What does success look like on a team this young? Barry has clearly heard the question all spring, and he's ready with an answer he's obviously been sitting on. Young doesn't mean bad. He points out that some of the youngest rosters in the league last season included teams that made deep playoff runs, and one that won the whole thing. Being young isn't an excuse. It's not a ceiling. But here's the uncomfortable part. You can say that about your defensive front, your offensive line, your receiver room. It's a much harder sell at quarterback, where inexperience gets magnified on every single snap in front of millions of people with your season on the line. And that's exactly where the room gets tense. A reporter asks Barry directly, if Cleveland genuinely believes it has two capable starters on the roster right now, why not just hand the job to the younger option? Why not build around your quarterback of the future starting today? Barry doesn't take the bait. He says he wouldn't rule anything out when it comes to who becomes the long-term answer. But right now, the job goes to whoever is most productive on the field. Period. No promises, no predetermined outcome. Just competition. It's the kind of answer that sounds diplomatic on the surface, but read between the lines and it's actually a loaded statement, because it means nothing is decided, nothing is protected. Whoever wins the job in August has to actually win it, not inherit it.
With a similar situation as last year where you have a crowded quarterback room with four guys, some young quarterbacks, are you approaching it with a similar mindset as last year where you're open to taking four guys on a 53-man roster, but you're always open to,
Yeah, I mean, I am. I think you've heard me say it's the most valuable position, and look, they've got to earn it. It's not just a situation where guys are on scholarship in terms of a roster spot. So we'll see. I don't think that you can necessarily be prescriptive at the.
Then comes a question that cuts even deeper. A reporter suggests that in past years, whenever this franchise ran a quarterback competition, there was always some asterisk attached, some missing piece on the roster, some excuse waiting in case it didn't work out. So is this year different? Is this finally a clean, fair competition, with a roster actually built to support whoever wins it? Barry pauses, and for the first time in the press conference, he doesn't have a polished answer ready. He admits the team hasn't even seen itself in pads yet. Everything right now is projection, not proof. And then he says something that lands harder than it probably should. No roster is ever perfect at quarterback. There's no such thing as a fully fair competition. There's just the version you have, right now, in front of you. It's honest. It's also not exactly reassuring if you're a fan hoping for certainty. So how does he evaluate who's actually winning this competition, snap by snap, practice by practice? Barry breaks it down like a coach, not a politician. Context matters. Was it third and long or second and short? Did a completed pass come from smart decision-making, or did the receiver bail out a bad read? Did an interception happen because of poor protection, or because the quarterback missed something obvious? He talks about grading players inside the actual intent of each drill. Some periods are meant to push aggression, some are meant to simulate real game situations, and you can't judge a quarterback fairly without knowing which one you're watching. It's a thoughtful answer. It's also a warning to anyone expecting a quick, simple verdict. This competition is going to be measured in details, not headlines. There's another thread running through this press conference that says just as much about the front office's mindset. A veteran pass rusher in his 30s who just left town after a visit. A reporter pushes Barry on it. Doesn't a player that age clash with everything this team is supposedly building toward? Barry pushes back, calmly but firmly. He says you can't evaluate a single roster move in a vacuum just because the broader trend has been getting younger. Fit matters. Cost matters. How a player slots into the bigger picture of his position group matters. Age on its own isn't a disqualifier. Then it gets more pointed. A reporter suggests the player in question doesn't seem like someone eager to grind through a full training camp. Barry doesn't let that sit. He calls the characterization flat out unfair, insisting that this is a player whose best football has historically come after a real physical camp, not someone dodging the grind, but someone who thrives inside it. It's a small moment, but it's one of the few times in the entire session where Barry sounds genuinely irritated on a player's behalf. Where things stand with an actual deal, he admits, is still very much up in the air. A good visit, real conversations, but nothing done yet. Now bring in the emotional wild card of the whole press conference, the return of a player with history here. A reporter asks Barry if there was any hesitation bringing this player back, given how his last chapter with the team actually ended, a moment widely known as a serious mistake.
Sure.
Andrew, when it comes to the quarterback situation, I hear this from people all the time. If Todd Monken feels that you guys have two quality starters on the roster right now, why not go with the young guy who might have a chance to be your quarterback of the future?
Yeah, I wouldn't rule anything out in terms of the whole quarterback of the future discussion. Like, ultimately, we're going to play the player who is the most productive, on the field.
And this is where Barry's tone shifts. He talks about reconciliation being possible in life. He says he doesn't believe in defining someone by their single worst moment. He acknowledges the mistake directly, doesn't dodge it, but says the relationship never fully died, that there's been an ongoing connection since it happened. And he says plainly that the 2 years they had together produced far more positives than negatives, despite how it ended. It's a rare glimpse of something personal from a front office executive who usually deals in strategy and cap numbers. For a moment, this isn't about wins and losses. It's about second chances and whether an organization is willing to extend one. Then the conversation swings back to swagger and identity. A reporter asks about a newly acquired defensive piece and what kind of energy he's brought to the building. Barry lights up a little here. He talks about a non-stop motor, a rare work ethic, a personality that's contagious throughout the entire defensive line room. He says that group has gotten unusually close, unusually fast, and that it's been one of the most encouraging things to watch all offseason. Small moments like that matter more than people think. Culture isn't built in press conferences. It's built in position rooms, in the unglamorous hours nobody sees. And Barry, win or lose this season, sounds genuinely invested in that part of the build. Then the questions turn to the group that ultimately protects whoever ends up under center. Is the offensive line actually better than it was a year ago? Barry sounds confident about the talent added this offseason as a group, but he keeps circling back to the same disclaimer that's hovered over half of this press conference. Nobody has seen this team in pads yet. Confidence on paper is one thing. Confidence on tape is another. For now, it's simply too early to say for certain. And then there's the rookie class, a group that carries its own kind of pressure this year, precisely because last year's rookies were so unusually good, so unusually fast to contribute. Barry is asked what he's hoping to see out of this year's group specifically. He's careful not to overpromise. He says the expectation for rookies is simple: compete and be productive. He's not naive enough to think every rookie class will hit the ground running the way last year's did. Professional football is a job, not a formality, and year one players are rarely as polished as they'll be in year 3 or year 5. But the baseline expectation doesn't change. Be a positive contributor, starting now. It's a theme that keeps repeating throughout the whole press conference in different forms. Patience paired with urgency. Give young players room to grow, but expect them to help win games while they're doing it. Two ideas that don't always sit comfortably together, especially not at the position everyone in that room really came to ask about. But eventually, every thread in this press conference pulls back to the same center of gravity, the quarterback room. Reporters ask if Barry is approaching this year's crowded competition the same way he did last year, when the team carried multiple young arms deep into camp. He says yes in spirit, but he's careful to add that nothing is guaranteed. Roster spots have to be earned, not handed out like scholarships. Injuries happen. Unexpected opportunities show up in the middle of camp that nobody predicted on day one. Flexibility, he says, is the only real plan.
It's a good question, Nira. I think context matters, right? Like, what are we trying to do? Like, okay, we're in a scripted period in practice. Like, okay, are we in 3rd and long where there's, a different measure of success than we're doing, 2nd and short situations? Why was the play successful? Did we complete the pass, but it was like the wrong progression and we got lucky? Or did we, throw an interception because the receiver, broke off his route, or there was like a lack of protection?
And then, almost as an afterthought, someone asks the simplest, sharpest question of the entire session. Does the starting quarterback need to be named before the joint practices with another team? Barry doesn't hesitate this time. He says it needs to be settled before week 1, not before joint practices, before the games count. It's a small comment, but it's the loudest thing said all day, because it puts a real deadline on a situation the whole city has been anxiously watching for months. And underneath it all of it sits the biggest unanswered question of the entire offseason. How does a franchise measure a season that isn't supposed to be measured just by the scoreboard? Barry has clearly thought about this one a lot, because his answer feels rehearsed in the best possible way, like something he's been refining in his head all spring. Toughness, competitiveness, a team that plays its best football late in the year, not early. Focus on the small list of things actually within your control: daily preparation, structure, habits, because so much of what happens over a full season is simply out of anyone's hands. Control what you can control, and trust that the record at the end reflects the work that was actually put in. It's a philosophy built for a young team that's going to take its lumps before it takes off. It's also, whether Barry says it out loud or not, a message aimed directly at a fan base that's grown exhausted waiting for patience to finally pay off. So where does that leave Cleveland walking out of that room? A front office that just spent real money extending its two homegrown defensive stars, a clear signal that the Garrett trade wasn't a teardown, it was a recalibration. A quarterback competition that Barry insists is genuinely open, genuinely undecided, and genuinely uncomfortable in its honesty. A returning player being welcomed back not with suspicion, but with something closer to grace. And a front office executive who, more than once, admitted the truth nobody wants to hear at the start of camp. Nobody really knows anything yet, not until the pads come on. If you're a Browns fan, that's either the most nerve-wracking thing you could hear or the most refreshing, because for the first time in a long time, nothing here feels scripted in advance. The job is actually open, the stakes are actually real, and somewhere between now and week 1, this quarterback room is going to answer a question that's followed this franchise for years, not with promises, but with results. If this kind of behind-the-scenes breakdown is what you come here for, make sure you're subscribed, because this quarterback battle is only just getting started, and you're not going to want to miss how it plays out. Because in Cleveland, hope has always come with a price. The only question left is who's going to be the one standing there to cash it in. Walk back through everything Barry said that day, and a pattern starts to emerge. He never once promised a championship. He never once guaranteed a name at quarterback before he had to. What he offered instead was something rarer in modern sports media: an admission that a coaching staff, a front office, and a fan base are all staring at the same blank page right now, waiting for training camp to start filling it in. That's a hard thing to sell as a highlight reel. It doesn't come with a slogan, it doesn't fit neatly into a headline, but it might be the most accurate description of where this franchise actually stands, talented in pieces, unproven as a whole, and about to find out in real time exactly what it has. So when the pads finally come on and the first live rep of camp actually happens, remember this moment. Remember the podium, the grounds crew tribute, the joke about age, the deadline for a decision nobody's ready to make yet. Because somewhere inside all of that ordinary press conference noise was the opening chapter of a season this city has been waiting years to write.